Hi, my name is Karen Stewart and I'm from ChocolateDogStudio.com, and today we are going to talk about why gauge is important. And I'm going to show you my very first crochet project, besides nose warmers, which I made when I was about 8. This Afghan was my very first project, and I crocheted this when I was 12 years old. And so when you look at it, I had no idea about gauge, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I did know how to make a granny square. And so I made granny squares in this blanket, and then I stitched them all together. And if you look at them, you can tell, you see how wonky, out of shape this square is? This is because, and it's different, let me show you, see if I can get this one over in the screen. See, this is nice and square, but it's a completely different size from this one. And so when you lay this blanket out flat, it has no real shape to it. It's not square at all. And this is because this blanket is crocheted using a bunch of different crochet hook sizes. And so in a minute, I'm going to get this out and I'm going to show you why gauge is important, because when you start crocheting, many times we have no idea what gauge is or why it matters. So hold on a minute and let me change all this out and show you why gauge is important. I'm working on a hexagon blanket, and this is crocheted using this G size hook. And what would happen if I lost my G size hook and I have another one here that is my H size hook? Well, those aren't too bad. That's not too far off. And let me see, is this my H hook? That isn't. Here it is. But as I worked, I continued to lose my hook, which has happened. Here is an I hook, an I-sized hook. Well, hold on a minute, let me find it. Here it is. Here's my I hook. Okay, so you can see that these are starting to get a little bit bigger. And here is a J hook. And this is my crocheted with the J hook. Now these are all exactly the same size, exactly the same number of rounds in these hexagons. And here is a K hook. You can see how this is pretty firm and pulled together really well, and makes a really nice little hexagon with very few holes, and the holes are much smaller. As you go here, you can tell, set those down a minute, they're different sizes. You can see that that's an I hook. The I hook makes for a bigger square. Now this is all crocheted using the same size yarn. It is all the same. So if we move here, this is a K hook actually, and look how big that is compared to the G hook. Now, is it the same size yarn, same gauge yarn? Yes, it is. It's a DK size yarn, which means double knitting. It is the same weight, but this, you see, makes a more lacy crochet pattern. So gauge is important if you're following a pattern and you're making clothing, or you're making a blanket. You want to use the same size hook all the way through. Now many times designers will say, you know, this many stitches in this inches, this many inches and this many rows, and they want you to crochet a swatch about this big that you can measure and make sure that your gauge is the same as theirs. That way you know that what you crochet will be roughly the same size. Now I say roughly because our crocheting depends on the tension, and the tension can be adjusted depending on how we feel. If we're really stressed, we may crochet really tightly, or if we're worried or we're concerned about the stitches falling off, we can crochet really tight, and what should be a swatch this big ends up being like this. And the directions will often say change to a hook size that will give you the same size swatch as what is written in the directions. So say your hexagon is supposed to be this size and you crochet this size. What do you do? And you're using a G size hook. Well, in that case you would want to go down 2 sizes and make another hexagon and measure and see how it turns out. What if you're using an H hook? No, an I hook, and your crocheting turns out this size. What do? Well, then you size up, and you may need to size up 2 sizes before you end up with a hexagon or a granny square the right size. These are all 3 rows, 1, 2, 3. And you can tell that it makes a big difference. If I stack all these up, because it's just kind of fun, if I stack them all up, you'll see that they all fit inside of each other. And they're just a little bit different. See how they look like a little pagoda. They are all smaller and than each other, and it makes a big difference in your crocheting, and that is why gauge is important. You do not want to start a sweater for your 4-year-old like I did one time and end up with a sweater that would fit a 12-year-old. So you need to be careful and pay attention to gauge.